When it comes to doing presentations, I normally don't need an introduction. But I'm sharing the stage on this one with somebody that it's kind of his, organizational debut with Freedom Advisors. So we normally like to feel those, have those rookies feel pretty special. So we thought we'd cue a little walk-up music. Okay, that's enough. That's okay. I didn't really know what kind of music he chose, so we'll have to work on it. So we saw our YouTube video. I know. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna let Jimmy kind of explain his company, kind of his journey towards being a real estate entrepreneur, and then private banking. And essentially, what we put together is this is a presentation that Jimmy gives to all of his potential investors and clients on real estate, why real estate. What we started figuring out as we were talking and working together is the same things that he's talking to folks about real estate are the same things we're talking to folks about private banking. So it's just the framework that we put those things in. So I'm gonna let Jimmy, you kind of kick it off or wherever you want. I'll get together.
Okay, sounds good. So if you look at the handout we sent out, when and by the way, my business partner's in the back in his seminar uniform. No, we already did. So when we first read Nelson's book, we found out about it on a Friday. We both read it during the weekend, and on Monday, like we come into the office and like slam it down. We're like, why hasn't anyone told us about this? And we were furious. And why isn't anybody doing this? Because all the real estate gurus say use your qualified plan and whatnot. And Bob and I we have a long history with Austrian economics, so we would never qualify, or we would even never consider a qualified plan. So to make a long story short, when we invest in a house, we're doing the same thing as investing in a life insurance policy. They go very hand in hand. And for us, it's just intuitive to invest in a life insurance policy. And as Carlos and Bob were talking as small business owners, it takes care of a couple immediate problems that we had. So we were probably at our 100th, right around our 100th property, and the bank started seeing a big number and started beating us up about liquidity. And if you, like Nelson said, and we were talking about strategic coaching mindsets, bankers do not have the mindset to really scale quickly and to create a bunch of value. So my return on emotion of dealing with bankers is zero. So to find a quick solution, when we saw IBC, we're like, all right, this is where we're going to store our capital in between deals. This is awesome. And so, because we had a banker who's like, if we're going to continue to lend you money, you need to have $200K in deposits with us. And I had the Austrian ideas in the back of my head. I'm like, no, you're not doing that. I'm not giving you $200K so then you can lend out $2 million and then my money sits on the side. Like that would be asinine. And for $200K, we could buy 4 more houses and collect cash flow. So it's not an option for us. So when we saw a life insurance policy that we could put that money inside a policy and at least beat inflation at 4%, that was a reasonable compromise for us. And then it helped with our buy-sell agreement because I think that got us close to $2 million. So I have 4 kids, and if I'm going to be buying 5 or 6 houses a month, I got to be, protecting my wife if anything would ever happen. So rambling a little bit there, but as financial professionals, if you go to a real estate investor, like these are going to be very, very quick commissions for you because they already have the mindset. They're already investing for appreciation, equity, leverage, cash flow, and they need it inflation hedge. And whether they can explain it in Austrian economics frame, or if they just know this intuitively, this will be an easy sale. And so I think we had a liquidity issue, and then the other problem is our investors, half the interest we were paying them was going to the federal government. And so they were taking all the risk and only getting half the reward, and it was coming out of my pocket. So that really frustrated me. So we needed another solution for our investors. So their tax liability would go down.
You want to talk a little bit about your business model?
Sure.
What your business model, because from a real estate perspective, there's a lot of different ways entrepreneurs can get into real estate. You guys are focused in one specific niche, which I think is good for people to understand.
We're strictly cash flow investors, and we strictly do lease to own. And we do a couple flips when it's appropriate, but very rarely will we flip. Very rarely are we looking for appreciation or a capital gain. And because we have such a hatred of paying taxes, when you are marketable, when it's cash flow, it's not taxed as high as capital gains. With depreciation, it's almost taxed at a 0% rate. So
explain the lease to own structure, how that basically works.
So to continue to bag on the banking system and the government, right now 80% of the population can't qualify for a bank loan. But these are generally entrepreneurs, they're hardworking people, and they are responsible and have cash. So they can do a lease to own where we act as the lender and we act as the landlord. And as we help them improve their credit until they can eventually qualify for a bank loan, we'll find a private lender who will then hold the note from them, but they do own the house and they're not a regular renter. They are getting equity in the property.
And they have the potential to have ownership after the least the 2-year period or whatever period that you have. So
correct.
You're actually helping them while you're helping yourself and the investment.
We call it trading.
Trading?
Yeah.
Works. If it works for them, it works for you guys. That's fantastic. So one of the things when we put this presentation together, all the different items that Jimmy mentioned, the appreciation, equity, leverage, cash flow, inflation hedge. Those are things that I noticed in our advance and protect philosophy with E3. One of the things that we talk about, we actually decided to create, at least from a consulting perspective, an arm, E3 Real Estate, which is essentially us looking to bring our resources in the wealth and tax arena to real estate entrepreneurs. Would it be fair to say, Jimmy, that a real estate entrepreneur has a very specific type of mindset?
Correct.
And is that mindset one where you love talking to financial professionals who try to get you to take your money out of real estate and put it into things that are market driven?
No.
Okay.
So the thing with a real estate investor is everybody gets into real estate because of Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's all about getting out of the rat race. So you have to get your monthly passive income to equal your monthly expenses. As soon as you do that, pop smoke, quit your job, and you can live perpetually off the real estate income. So my main argument when a financial planner would approach me is they would come to me and tell me that the S&P goes up 8% year over year, and I know that's crap. So it's not really interesting to me, and I'm like, why would I want a qualified plan? I'm already financially free. The number one strategy of everyone in the rat race is a qualified plan. Why would I go backwards and use something that everybody in the rat race is still doing? It made no sense to me.
So if real estate professionals, real estate entrepreneurs probably aren't having a value-added conversation with a financial professional, it's probably because the financial professional isn't educating them about what they can do that complements what they're already doing, which is essentially what we kind of put together. Because when we look at our advance and protect philosophy, the most important thing to us, and we have this conversation with clients all the time. It doesn't matter what their background is, what they do. We're asking them a very simple question when we're finding out what type of assets they have. Our first question is, what is the purpose of this money? What is it there for? What do you want it to do for you? And then once we find that out, we say our role and the ways we're going to add value is we're going to figure out ways to protect the purpose of your money. So I haven't met a client yet or a prospect yet that when we say that, they're like, no, I don't want that. If you tell me what the purpose of your money is, and our goal is to figure out a way to protect that purpose, then we're in alignment, we're congruent. Now, the way we go about doing that is what we refer to as our safety, liquidity, growth model.
And you were the first financial planner to ever ask me that, which was another thing that used to piss me off too about the industry. Like they would tell me what I should be doing.
I mean, folks, it was like 15 minutes before he cussed him. I'm proud of him.
That's not,
I mean, that's
not a curse word.
FCC, and you actually, I think this is important to note, the way in which you came across E3 was through Jeff Perkey, and actually Jeff Perkey's brother,
right,
who works at the MAC where you hang out a lot.
Right.
You just talk about that a little bit, because again, this is important to me from a networking perspective to understand how you can grab people's attention. So talk about that interaction.
So all this occurred like in 3 weeks. I had a strategic coach meeting. We read Nelson Nash's book, and then I was drinking at the MAC. And so
all good things happen when you're at a bar, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
I still had this idea, like, you know, if privatized banking is so great, why isn't anybody doing it? But it was still like my little secret. So I'm talking to my bartender, and him and Jeff, but John and Jeff invest in real estate too. So he was asking me questions. I was like, I got to tell you about this great little secret called using life insurance. And John knew about it. And he's like, oh, you got to meet my brother Jeff. And I'm like, what's he do? He's like, he's a financial planner. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, I really have to meet with him. So I showed up. Jeff showed up at a meeting in our office, and I intentionally wore like gym shorts, and it just got done with a workout. So if I could get out of this as fast as possible, I could. But that day right there, like, Jeff's a good guy, and he showed us how to use a policy to escrow our taxes and to escrow what we pay for utilities and maintenance. And then he was my new best friend. And then I introduced him.
Aren't you lucky, Jeff?
Then he gave me your book because, you know, 6 months ago, I thought I was on an island just listening to Austrian economic podcasts and getting angry and getting taxed. And I was like, you know, just me and Bob against the world. And then I'm like, a guy who lives 2 miles from me wrote a book about this.
We happen to who went to the same high school, which is a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
So when we're having this conversation with somebody like Jimmy or anybody else, what we're trying to get them to understand is our focus, our philosophy, the way we communicate with our clients is already in alignment with you. What we have to do is we got to show you how we will educate you and then also bring strategies to the table. So Jimmy and I just kind of put this together. I said, Jimmy, tell me the things that you love about real estate. Tell me the components. Tell me the things that you look at that make you feel like you want to add more real estate to your, you know, ever-growing wealth. And, you know, these were the things that he laid out. And all I said was, well, with our safety and liquidity growth model, we already have those conversations. It's just how do we conform those ideas to our model so that we're on the same page? Because I don't think it makes sense is you don't want to treat a real estate entrepreneur any different than you do any other entrepreneur. They have the same thought processes, but you have to get them to understand you're thinking the same way they are. You just might explain things a little different, or you might give them a different perspective, which I think for you.
But yeah, I think you have to treat them differently than a W-2 employee.
Absolutely, right. Entrepreneur over here, W-2 employee over here, although our goal would be to get more W-2 people to think more entrepreneurially. So what we kind of did is I just want to walk through this with you real quick, and then we put a simple example together just to show you what we're talking about. And again, this is by no means a platform to say this is how you go talk to real estate investors. Conceptually, the conversation parts here make a lot of sense, but you know, understanding the way that Jimmy's business works, that's diving deep into looking at his actual cash flow, looking at his books, you know, looking at his tax situation, seeing the way that we can help. And that's actually where we brought E3 tax into help, because that wasn't an area that's
not part of my unique ability.
Not a part of my unique ability. That's a good way to answer it. So here's the way we think about it when it comes to safety. So people are looking for ways to protect their principal. They're looking at ways to hedge inflation. Bob and Carlos were just talking about, you know, the inflation concerns, things becoming more inflationary. So when we talk to people about protecting their personal or business economy, we're figuring out, look, we got to utilize strategies that combat the erosion of your capital base.
Which means you cannot put your dry powder in a bank.
Right. So number one, that's a really fancy way of saying protecting you against inflation, and it makes you sound really smart. So if you,
and my favorite thing about real estate is in like 20 years, I'm gonna hand the bank like garbage, inflated dollars with no value, while my rent stay the same. Yeah, like that's my favorite part of real estate.
and for us as advisors, if that's what Jimmy wants to do, then great. We just want to figure out the best way to go about doing it. But this idea that, and we talked to a lot of entrepreneurs about this idea that inflation is a silent tax, right? You don't realize it, but that is a tool that the government can use. You've got the taxation of money, which a lot of people know about it and they don't like, but then there's inflation. So trust me, they're not going to be able to tax you. The other thing they're going to figure out is, can we devalue your dollars? Because if they devalue your dollars, it's also devaluing the government's debt. So it's benefiting the government and it's hurting savers. Like Jimmy's saying,
but it's also pushing savers into the market where they don't belong. They don't belong to speculate. They should be saving or investing. Oh, the next slide. I should have read that.
No, you're good. No, that's perfect. We practiced this once, and he was worried. He's like, "Is this going to go okay?" I'll take care of it. I'll make it work out good. But you talk to people about how do you hedge inflation? And well, do I use equities? Do I use real estate? Precious metals, especially design life insurance contracts. The idea is we got to figure out as financial professionals what's most appropriate for you. So even with an entrepreneur that is using real estate, that might not be the only asset they have money in, or that may be the only asset. But we've got to figure out what's appropriate for them. The thing that always amazes me when I talk to an entrepreneur, and Jimmy's a perfect example, when you come in and you say, well, what is it that you want to do with your money? Let us figure out ways to add value. They're like, well, aren't you going to pitch us this? Or, aren't you going to try and talk us out of this or doing that? I'm like, why? If you can show me that you can put $1 into your enterprise, and that dollar is going to earn you, a 20% or a 15% or a 30% return on your investment, why would I want you to not put your money there and put it somewhere where it's going to perform at a lower level? The only thing that we might talk about is, where are those dollars? Where are you storing those dollars before you put them in your business? And I think as we've had more of those discussions, it makes a lot more sense. And even though the concept of privatized banking made all the sense in the world to you, I think the one thing you were trying to figure out is, how do I actually utilize it so it positively impacts my business? Right. And that's really what we do. If we look at ourselves as a personal banker, for Jimmy, he's not going to the banks, he's coming to us. And he may have to go to the bank for a transaction, but he's not going to the bank for advice. He's coming to us for advice, which is what a personal banker originally did for most people, more from a regional banking perspective or a community banking perspective. So that role is still valuable. It's just not being fulfilled by today's larger, more traditional banking system. All right, thinking about liquidity. So equity and leverage are two things. This is something that I went into a little bit of detail here, only because if you understand this and you understand how real estate investors think, whether somebody uses real estate or not as a tool to build their wealth, you can use this to explain privatized banking. Because people, they know about real estate, they understand real estate, they just might not understand how it can actually add value to them. So I have this conversation a lot with people when we're talking about privatized banking. I say, look, I hear very few people understand it or take advantage of it. So equity is access to your principal and growth of an asset without a liquidity event, okay? That is getting to your money without having to sell something, okay? So accessing the equity of an asset means you're not interrupting its appreciation, which is what we talk about with privatized banking, right? Accessing the cash value without, uninterrupted compound growth. Leverage is the financial mechanics behind getting access to your equity through a loan from a financial institution with your asset as collateral for the transaction. So that is no different than what Nelson talked about in becoming your own banker, where you are financing, right? We finance everything. We either use somebody else's money and pay interest, or we use our cash and have an opportunity cost. But understanding that leverage is something that essentially allows you to earn both an internal return and an external return. That's important. And I think that's the main thing we focused on with you is if we can get this money stored here and working for you, and it only makes you 3 or 4%, but that's being in one. That's 3 or 4% plus whatever else you're earning. I don't understand sometimes getting frustrated why someone wouldn't look at that and say, okay, this has to be better for me than what I'm doing. If I'm choosing between either this return or that return, and all of a sudden I can get both, it doesn't matter that the rate, the amount of money you earn internally in the insurance is only 3 or 4%. It's the fact that it's 3 or 4% on top of whatever else you're earning. So if you've got somebody like you, what do you think with your guys' business, the cash flow return? Have you guys kind of calculated that within the business? What do you think that is?
Like a percentage?
Yeah, percentage.
We're pretty happy with like 12 or 13.
Okay, so 12 or 13. So you like 12 or 13. That's a lot better than putting money probably into the market or other places as well. But do you like 12 or 13 and tack on another 3 or 4%?
I mean, any point more, I'll take it.
Right. So do you have to take more risk for that? No. Do you have to do anything different with your money to do that? Not really, once we start structuring things. The other thing to look at is if you're making 12 and you add another 3 to it, that's a 25% return from your money. So that, just like what Todd and Kim were talking about yesterday, you got to help people realize that this incremental benefit that you can have for them, getting a combination of internal and external return together, compounding over a 10, 15, 20-year period can be substantial, and you're not having them take more risk. That's the huge aspect of this. When we say protecting the purpose of your money, we actually mean it. We don't want you to take more risk. We actually want to figure out ways for you to take less risk, but have your money working for you more efficiently.
And the 4% also creates less risk for us because if we're making 0 or a negative interest rate and getting charged at the bank, it's going to incentivize us to go buy a house we don't necessarily need to buy.
Right.
So if we do need to take a time out and have the capital sit somewhere, 4%, I'll take it all day long, tax-free.
And that's the other thing here, the preferential treatment in the U.S. tax code. Both real estate and life insurance are provided tax preferential treatment in the tax code. So those two, they go together. They're, cousins from a standpoint of using them. And you mentioned the depreciation and the benefit to your cash flow. The same concept with privatized banking.
But everybody gets into real estate too to not pay taxes. So you find another asset they don't pay taxes on, it's very easy.
They've got a friend in common. Their hatred for the tax code. Appreciation and cash flow when we're talking about growth. We covered this a little bit when I did the growth profile, talking about income versus appreciation. This is something that I like to just talk through with people. The idea of appreciation is the accumulation of your assets value over time. You got to be thinking about unrealized appreciation and realized appreciation. Unrealized appreciation is that paper profit. Now, you and Bob actually did a podcast and a YouTube video on, what was it, the paper millionaire, the Excel millionaire. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, when people say real estate appreciates 3% a year, I think that's about as valid as the S&P goes up 8% a year. So we don't invest for appreciation. And then I have all this Bob Murphy and Tom Woods and Austrian economics in the back of my head talking about crashes. And so we specifically designed our business to withstand the crash. And the people who really get hurt in the crashes are the people looking for appreciation. So with cash flow, right now, the appreciation I can count on is the appreciation I get out of my life insurance policy.
Yeah.
If we get appreciation out of our houses, it's a nice bonus.
And essentially, same thing that Jimmy just said, but you got to realize there's several economic factors that are essentially out of.
And there's a counterparty risk for real estate appreciation. You have to find the next person to buy.
Right.
I don't have to find the next person to buy to get my 3% annualized return.
Right. Exactly.
That was huge.
And you can, if you see something coming where values are going to be depressed, you can store more capital and wait and then go and be a buyer at a time when everybody else is looking to sell. You don't have to be a seller in order to buy your next deal, because you've got cash flow coming in. And that's the thing where when we talk about the internal return, not only is it uninterrupted, but the idea is you do control that. So there's a lot of things you can't control with the economy, but there are certain things you can control in your personal or business economy. So there we go. So cash flow, external return, appreciation, internal return. One of the other elements that we talk about, we already kind of mentioned this, looking at finding assets and financial strategies where you can combine internal and external returns to build your wealth. That's the protection element. The idea that you're getting money to work for you in two places is what protects your dollars. But here's the other thing too, working with a team of financial professionals. So, you've engaged with us obviously on the wealth side, but also on the tax side.
Right, because I didn't want to have to explain how to do my account.
Right. And
no, I mean, I sent an email to my accountant, like, talk to me about IBC. He's like, oh, I heard it's not that great. I was like, okay, thanks. You're fine. But I don't have to explain it to Schreiber. He knows how to make it work, and I don't want to spend that time in.
Yeah. But the other element to that is, and the conversations with Jimmy aren't that short. They're actually a lot longer. He goes into a lot more detail.
Digs and comments.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we decided to do was we wanted to use one example that took appreciation cash flow, using an example of somebody that maybe had capitalized a private banking policy. They were going to use it with real estate. So again, this is one example. This is not what we see everybody doing, but it was just a simple way to kind of lay numbers out on a spreadsheet. So
Todd has plenty of videos that get to this point. We'll butcher it and then just go to Todd's page.
That's right. So we said, all right, we got a $100,000 real estate investment, a 15-year time horizon, looking at 3% appreciation that Jimmy doesn't like, and then $1,000 a month in net cash flow after all expenses. And then what we also said was, if this was a client that we were already repositioning other dollars, into privatized banking strategy with $50,000 a year over 5 years, and looking at an internal return, looking at interest charge on the policies. I chose all this on purpose because, immediately somebody's going to say, well, it's 4% internal return, but I'm being charged 5%. How is that going to benefit me? But like I talked about yesterday, the understanding is Jimmy's getting that 4% now, and that interest that's charged to him is on the back end. So for him, if he's got that death benefit built up, that death benefit might pay the interest, or he pays it with depreciated dollars from inflation. These are all things that
or a next deal comes through and I just pay off the loan and let it sit there.
But this is also something too that we talked through a lot. Like you saw that and said, hey, how does that make sense?
Yeah, people get so angry about the interest to the policy, but like their credit card bill swipe at 8% on a good day, all day long.
Yeah. So for us, we just wanted to put this together from a conversation standpoint. So we looked at it. These are the scenarios we looked at, and it's all in the handouts. So we said, somebody buys that $100,000 property, and again, the $100,000 property could actually be 4 properties of $25,000 that they put a down payment on. It could be they put $100,000 in, but it was $200,000 property. But the bottom line was they got $100,000 of their money in real estate, and that is generating $1,000 a month of free cash flow. That's the net effect. Borrow from your policy to buy the real estate and accumulate the cash flow and appreciation. Borrow from your policy to buy real estate and pay back the loan principal only, and then borrow from your policy and pay back 100% of the loan principal and interest. So we kind of laid this out because I know these are some conversations that people talk about, and I think the most important thing, and Jimmy and I talked about this, everybody's always looking for the best way to do things, and what we talk about is there's ways of doing this without privatized banking, and there's ways to doing it with privatized banking. We just want to get people in the with column, and then we're going to do whatever makes sense in their situation. So if Jimmy wants to pay off all the loan and the interest because he wants a bigger death benefit for his wife, then that's what we're going to do. But if he doesn't want to do that, that's okay too. He's got the control. He's got the choice. As a personal banker, that's the conversation that we're going to have with him. So
but that's why it's also called infinite. The first time I had dinner with Carlos, we were pinging like 3 or 4 ideas off. He's like, this is why it's called infinite. You just have to explain the entrepreneur the rules and then let him marinate on it for a while. And every time I come to a meeting, I was like, oh, we should do another policy for this. Like infinite ideas will start coming once they know the rules and understand the concepts.
Absolutely. So I'm going to walk through these different scenarios, and then we have there's a chart in the back that kind of lays them all out. So scenario 1, buy the real estate with cash, got our net cash flow. So over 15 years, that $100,000 property grows to 155.
And you would hope, just ignore those numbers. That's right. The interesting is,
And here's the other thing, so $1,000 a month accumulates over 15 years, so that's 180 months, so that's basically $180,000. Now, the reason we're showing it this way is we're assuming 0% growth of these funds because we want them to be liquid, because most real estate entrepreneurs prefer the access to the cash for future investment opportunities. Now here, we're not showing this money being redeployed into real estate, only because we're trying to just show, if you do this over 15 years, what does it look like? What is that rate of return? That's not to say that that's what you should do, but that's kind of a starting point. So if somebody sees that and says, well, I would never let that money sit there for 15 years. Well, why is that? Well, we'll show you, because while it looks like if you take a $100,000 investment and you got $1,000 a month that you're earning off of it, after a year, that's $12,000. So you would think that that is what percent of return? 12%, okay? But if that money isn't compounding, your actual return, your compounded return is going to be less in the future. So it's not just about the cash flow, it's about what are you doing with the cash flow? Where is it being stored? How does that money work for you? Second scenario, borrow money from the policy, and in this example, we're going to show the policy, we don't pay back the loan. So we basically take the money out, put it into real estate, don't pay back the loan. What is the net impact on the cash value? So how does that cash value continue to grow even though we're not paying it back? So there's going to be an interest cost, right? That's going to factor in, but what's the net effect? And the other thing is we're going to show that $1,000 a month is just still accumulating in the bank. So we've got a policy, we're using the money's still growing internally, but we're still keeping my private bank and my traditional bank separate. Okay, so again, just another thought process for people. And the other thing that we're going to show you in the numbers, if we already had $250,000 capitalized in the policy and we pulled out 100, that means there's still 150,000 of remaining capital. So if we, after 20 years, if we have $215,000 sitting in the policy, we got to make sure that we had 150 that we put in that really shouldn't be counted. So we kind of subtracted that out, which is the extra 65. This will all be on the chart at the end. There we go. Third one, we looked at, still got the appreciation, same cash flow. This time what we said is, let's take the $1,000 a month and have the $1,000 a month go back into my policy. The reason being, what's it going to look like if it's just sitting in the bank versus what is it going to look like if it goes back to the policy? So we said
the bank would be making the arbitrage off instead of you,
right?
Which would be unacceptable,
right? And knowing that criminal. So the other thing that what we'd be talking about is that $1,000 a month is going back in and it pays back the principal. That's for about 100 a month, 100 months. So we have another 80 months where we would show the $1,000 a month going into the paid up additions of the policy, right? So we're not paying back the loan interest. We're just going to build it back up into the policy because we can do that. The policy is flexible because we're that far into the contract. So this again kind of drives up the growth of the money inside of the policy instead of it having it sit in the bank. And then the fourth scenario is we actually take the same cash, but what we did is we amortized it over 180 months. So we said, if we want to pay back the principal and interest in the policy, what would that payment look like over 180 months? So it came out to be, $803. So the remaining $197 a month, that would go into the PUAs. So again, this is just showing the flexibility of what somebody can do. People think about money, finances, debt, they all think about it differently. So for us, we want to have the flexibility to show them there's a lot of different things we can do here, and we can change it. You know, you can start doing it one way and then change what it is you're doing 5 months into it or 5 years into it. But essentially, the chart with all the different amounts that we had. You know, the key thing here is you've got your appreciation, your cash flow, and really nothing else. So you've got your 335 there. That equates to a little over, almost an 8.5% return over that 15-year period. The reason why we're showing,
to me, that's all our rent just sat there and did nothing.
Right.
I mean,
and the other thing is the reason why it's saying cash value in year 20 is we're saying the first 5 years they weren't doing real estate; they were just capitalizing their policy. So we're basically 15 years into after they've capitalized. So that 12% cash flow return that we saw is actually compounded is about 8.5. Why? Because my $1,000 a month is sitting in the bank doing nothing for me. So in our minds, when you have real estate investors thinking that way, and Jimmy, I think this would be a fair statement, most people would say, I don't want to put it in the policy because I'm not going to have 100% liquidity right away. So that money sitting in the bank gives me 100% liquidity. That's worth more to me than my money working for me in both places. You wouldn't agree with that.
I mean, if I can get access to 75% of it, I'll be okay with that. So I can start getting taxed like the political class and banks and do everything Kiyosaki tells every real estate investor to do.
That's like your passive aggressive way of like communicating your angst for the system.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to get hooked.
That's right.
So if I have to, it only cost me 25%.
Which is temporary.
Right. Yeah. For a year.
Yeah.
I'm not that hard up for cash.
Yeah. And the second example, doing the policy, just doing the policy loan and not doing anything else. So putting money in the insurance, taking the money out of the insurance, and just letting, not even paying it back, that net return. And we did all these calculations in Truth Concept. So we got a 9.7 return. So the increase there from a net perspective is it's 15 years into using the money. We haven't had a full compounding of the dollars over time. Plus, we're not using our cash flow. Our cash flow is still sitting outside, which to us wouldn't make sense, but it's still an improvement. It's still 1.3% better.
A third better investment. Still absolutely 33% better investment.
Now, if we put the money back into the policy, then we've got basically almost a 2.5–3% increase in cash flow. And all we've done is we've replaced your traditional bank with your own private bank. And the one thing I wanted to point out here is the difference between the return on that capital between paying back only principal and paying back 100% of the loan was like 0.01%. My point to that is, there's a lot of control either way that you do that, but I think the most important thing is you're not going to be harming yourself if you're paying back the interest, because that's going to the net cash value. But the other side of it is, what's the interest rate environment look like at that time? This is 15 years out. Is that really something you want to be doing as your personal banker? We're going to be having those discussions. I think that's pretty much what we just talked about.
Well, if you go back to those numbers, that's what we say to our investors, why their money needs to hit a policy before it hits us. Because generally the strategy, worst case scenario we'll have them do is the third one. And where you basically say, this will add 50% to your return over 10 years. So it's a pretty easy argument to sell.
Questions on any of that information?
Explain that last statement you just made, the 50%.
Oh, the 3%, almost 3%.
So if you look, it was a $100,000 policy. It creates 91 in cash. And that's essentially, when we get a private lender to hit a policy and pay them 8%, if you tack on that other 4%, we'll show them in numbers that now you're going to get 12%. We just added 50% to your return.
And I think that's the thing with real estate investors, when we can show them their money working more efficiently in their system, right? It's not working efficiently from a perspective of my overall financial picture. It's getting your system to be a part of your financial picture. But the other aspect
And it's
of this,
working at two places at once.
right?
Who doesn't love that?
And I think another thing that we've noticed when we have a client that does something similar to this, pulls money out, they get an external return, and then they have cash, and they've experienced a win. And then the first question is, okay, what am I going to do with this money? We're going to say, well, let's put it back where you got, where it came from, and let's do it again, right? So you're building on your successes, but even if you don't have a good scenario, I mean, we've talked with some clients who have struggled with cash flow, or maybe a deal doesn't go right, or their business is struggling, and we're saying they're trying to figure out how they're going to get out of something. Well, this is another tool to help with that as well. I mean, you can use these dollars to prevent yourself from going deeper into a hole, and then as you recover, your money is still working for you. So it can go both ways. It's not just, this is only for all the successes. This is whether things are going good or things are going bad. Your money is still working for you. You're not giving up the time value of money over a 5, 10, 20, 30-year period. That money is working for you. If you have something that's struggling and you got to get out of it, whether it's debt or restructuring things, we can accelerate time with this type of tool, because maybe it takes yourself 30 years to kind of get that money back to you, but that 30-year window, that money is still working for you. The underlying dollars are still working for you. That's a powerful thing that people don't really understand, but we can sit in front of them and show them in their financial picture. This is how it's helping. So did we have any questions? Great.
You mentioned your investors. How many investors do you have? How long do you use their money?
We use their money for 2 years, and we give them agreed upon interest rate. So they're strictly private lenders. They don't have any equity in the property. And most of them like it that way.
But yours is, you don't do much flipping. Yours is the lease on.
Right.
Lease purchase.
So with our investors, even if there is another crash, if we're still collecting rent, they're still protected. And we're buying these properties at way below market value.
And what's the worst case scenario for the investor?
Like, how bad?
Like
me and Bob take their money and go to Costa Rica bad, or?
No, like
that can't happen, because their money goes to the title company and they're listed on the note and the deed of trust, just like the bank. So they have every right, those evil bankers do.
So then basically worst case scenario is they own a property,
right,
that they basically paid for.
Right.
And
well, like Perky's loan, his house burned down. He still got his interest check every month.
I didn't know about it.
Right.
About 3 weeks after it happened. Oh, by the way, your house burned down. Okay, my check clear? Yes.
So I mean, we can make a compelling argument. It's a pretty secure investment.
absolutely. Anybody to add, Todd or Kim? Any thoughts from you guys? Oh,
You got Wade.
I just have a question. When it's being financed this way out of the policy, if you're paying back the interest, you can't write it off. Can you? It's a business expense.
Me and Bob, or you as the lender?
Whoever's paying it.
Well,
So it's a business expense to us, and then you could create a private lending LLC, and there'd be ways to mitigate that tax liability.
but
Yeah, I said
in most cases, it's probably no, because that interest that's not interest from a lending institution, which is where normally the tax deductibility comes from. You're kind of self-lending, right? You're kind of lending within yourself, so you're not two separate entities. You're one. Would that be a fair way to look at it?
You're paying the interest to yourself.
Right. Yeah. And even though it's going to a bank, that type of interest isn't looked at in the eyes of the IRS as deductible. But the flip side of that is that uninterrupted compound growth is kind of offsetting in a much bigger way the fact that you can't deduct. Kim, did you grab the mic?
I just had a question for Jimmy. I was curious, geography-wise, and also how you're finding your properties. And then also a clarification, aren't you borrowing against the policy? You're not really taking from it, right?
Correct. Yes. Always borrowing against.
Good point.
Absolutely. No.
So So we buy all in St. Louis. We buy in North County and South County. And then we'll do it.
How are you finding properties?
That's Bob's secret sauce. I just go find the money.
I'm just watching
So you guys
St.
like-
Louis in an ugly orange shirt.
Yeah.
T-shirt, people talk today.
we buy a lot off the MLS, and then the standard RIA meetings, and we actually had a wholesaler move into our office just so we knew sellers and buyers would be coming in all the time too.
You, what is the, what is like the value? I mean, is it difficult to find properties in the way that you guys are?
Not Bob's secret sauce.
Not about.
So we find 5 or 6 a month.
Okay. Somebody have, yes?
Yeah, it was just a question about whether or not you have gut with realtors or deal with realtors at all.
Bob.
Deal with MLS.
Bob's getting his license.
Just, Jimmy, I was just gonna say, the one I did with you guys recently, I used my policy, bought the property. He said there's no appreciation, but it sure seems like there's gonna be appreciation on this one.
I just said it's not as guaranteed as in a life insurance policy. But that monthly cash flow, that'll make you feel good, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys are handling the whole
Just
thing.
focus on that feeling.
Anybody have anything else? Perfect. Okay, so looks like, no, lunch is not ready. We need 5 minutes. So what we're gonna do is we'll